Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today is 94.1 degrees with a low of 70.4 degrees, so expect another warm one. Stay cool and hydrated out there. Coming up, we'll examine the Pentagon's new limits on journalists sharing unapproved information and what it means for press freedom. We'll also look at President Trump's evolving approach to homelessness, pushing for mandatory treatment programs over traditional shelters. Plus, reactions to the latest economic indicators and tips for navigating rising food prices. All this and more on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. Our first story this morning dives into a chilling development at the Pentagon that has the press world up in arms. Joining me to unpack these new media restrictions is our defense correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, what is the Pentagon doing that is sparking such outrage?
Thanks, Grace. As of today, September 23rd, the Pentagon has rolled out a policy that critics are calling a full frontal assault on press freedom. It requires credentialed journalists to sign a binding pledge promising not to gather, report, or share any information, classified or not, unless military officials give it the green light for public release. This comes from a 17-page memo handed out to reporters just 4 days ago on September 19th. According to reporting from the Washington Post and CBS News, it's basically turning reporters into reluctant referees of what the public can know.
That sounds like a pledge of allegiance to secrecy rather than transparency. Can you explain what this controlled unclassified information is that they are so worried about?
Absolutely, Grace. Controlled unclassified information, or CUI, is sensitive stuff that is not technically classified but still needs protection because it could harm national security if mishandled. Think things like operational plans or personnel details that are not top secret but not for casual chat either. The memo, as quoted verbatim in The Guardian, says the Department of War information must be approved for public release by an appropriate authorizing official before it is released, even if it is unclassified. Violations could mean losing press credentials and getting banned from all U.S. military sites. Time magazine has covered how this builds on executive orders like 13,526 for classified info and 13556 from 2010 that set up CUI rules. But never before has it forced journalists to sign on the dotted line like this.
Department of War, that is a bold rebrand. Tell me more about that and who is behind this memo.
Right, Grace, it's like giving the Defense Department a war paint makeover. President Trump signed an executive order on September 4th, just 19 days ago, adding Department of War as a secondary title for communications and ceremonies. The Washington Post and Al Jazeera report it's not a full legal name change, no congressional nod needed, but it harks back to pre-1947 days and signals a more aggressive stance. The memo hails from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's office. He was confirmed back in January and has been pushing these controls hard. CBS News quotes Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell defending it as basic common-sense guidelines to protect sensitive information while claiming commitment to transparency. But Hegseth himself posted on X that the press does not run the Pentagon, the people do, and to wear a badge and follow the rules or go home. It's a real badge of dishonor for open reporting.
And the access restrictions inside the building, how bad are those?
They are tightening the leash big time, Grace. Reporters are now stuck in zones like press pens, the food court, and courtyards, with escorts mandatory elsewhere. This escalates from Hegseth's May announcements, as detailed in Time and Yahoo News. For context, historically, journalists had more leeway to move around unescorted in non-secure areas and build sources on unclassified info without pre-approval. The Washington Post and NPR note this breaks decades of bipartisan norms.
What sparked this? Was there some incident?
It traces to the Signalgate fiasco in March, when Hegseth accidentally looped in Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg to a Signal chat on classified Yemen strikes. Democracy Now! And the Irish Times covered that blunder, which amped up leak fears and led to these May tweaks, culminating in this memo.
The backlash must be intense. What are critics saying?
It is a firestorm, Grace. Mike Balsamo of the National Press Club called it a direct assault on independent journalism in statements to Democracy Now! And CBS News, warning we would only see what officials want. The Freedom of the Press Foundation, via The Guardian, labels it prior restraint, the worst First Amendment foul. Seth Stern told Time the government cannot bar public info just by calling it a threat. Constitutional expert Erwin Chemerinsky blasted it to the Washington Post as stunning ignorance of the First Amendment. Even Republican Don Bacon called it so dumb to The Independent, fearing Pravda-style coverage. The ACLU, per Democracy Now! And Al Jazeera, sees it as silencing critics. NPR's Thomas Evans says they are gearing up to fight it legally, with no court rulings yet, according to The Guardian and Time.
And the Pentagon Press Association.
Kevin Barron, their former VP, told Time it's 100% an intimidation tactic to kill transparency and make reporters de facto propagandists, as Katie Fallow put it in Yahoo News. Joyce Vance cited the 1971 Pentagon Papers case to CBS News, stressing the press duty to expose misconduct.
With sources like unnamed ones now at risk, this could shield a lot. Any signs of pushback?
Media groups like the ACLU and Pentagon Press Association are eyeing lawsuits on enforced speech and prior restraint grounds. The full memo is not public yet, but CBS News, The Washington Post, and The New York Times have quotes and summaries from insiders. Outlets like Time and The Independent urge collective resistance to keep the watchdogs barking.
A war on words indeed, Ethan. Thanks for breaking this down so thoroughly. Up next, our second story. And now, turning to our second story this morning, the controversy swirling around President Trump's executive order on homelessness. It's a bold shift that's got everyone talking about civil confinement for unhoused folks. Joining me to break it down is our policy reporter, Chloe. Chloe, good morning. What exactly is this order proposing?
Good morning, Grace. Signed back on July 24th, this executive order called Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets aims to tackle the homelessness crisis by expanding civil confinement. That's basically involuntary commitment to treatment facilities for people struggling with addiction or mental illness. According to NPR's Morning Edition today, hosted by Michelle Martin and Layla Fidel, it's a public safety move to clear streets in big cities like Los Angeles and New York. NPR's addiction correspondent Brian Mann called it a treatment-first approach, ditching the old housing-first model that gives homes without preconditions.
Housing first sounds like the humane way to go. So what's the rationale behind this big change, and how does it build on what's already out there?
Exactly, Grace. It's like putting the cart before the horse, or should I say the tent before the treatment. The order cites a 2023 University of California San Francisco survey, as reported by SFGate and UCSF.edu, showing 2/3 of unhoused people had mental health symptoms like depression or hallucinations in the last 30 days, and 82% faced serious issues lifetime. Plus, 65% used illicit drugs regularly, mostly methamphetamines. But critics, per NPR's WESA in Pittsburgh, say it oversimplifies. HUD's 2023 and 2024 annual homeless assessment reports on hooducer.gov blame a severe housing crisis, rising rents, stagnant wages, and systemic racism for the over 650,000 people unhoused nightly. Only 4% in that UCSF study blamed their own substance use for losing their last home. 12% pointed to income loss.
That's eye-opening. And this civil confinement, how does it work legally? Is it like those psych holds we've heard about?
Spot on. It broadens existing laws like psychiatric holds or assisted outpatient treatment. Think New York's Kendra's Law, which allows intervention if someone's a danger to themselves or others. But now it targets homelessness head-on, per analyses from The Nation, the Marshall Project, and PBS. Trump even floated tent cities on federal land for treatment or arrests and National Guard sweeps, as CBS News reported from White House briefings. In D.C., plans move folks far from the Capitol, according to PBS and WUNC.
Tent cities for treatment? That's a stretch. Walk us through the implementation and those federal incentives.
It's a real commitment-phobic's nightmare, Grace. The order directs HUD, HHS, and DOJ to shift funds. States get grants if they ban urban camping, loitering, and public drug use while using civil commitment, per whitehouse.gov and the Bipartisan Policy Center on bipartisanpolicy.org. This could redirect billions from Housing First, with HUD and HHS issuing funding notices that encourage flexible commitment rules. WUSF Public Media in Tampa highlighted how Florida's piloting tent relocations with National Guard help. California is eyeing broader assisted outpatient treatment bills via the LA Times, and Texas and Arizona have loitering bans to snag those grants, though per endhomelessness.org, no one's scaled mass commitments yet.
Sounds incentivized to the max, but the backlash must be fierce, especially legally.
Oh, it's a legal tent ACLE match. Over a dozen lawsuits by today, September 23, 2025, per Courthouse News and Ballotpedia.org. The National Homelessness Law Center sued HUD in D.C. federal court, docket 25-CV-01234, seeking a temporary restraining order on funding shifts for violating the Americans with Disabilities Act and Olmstead, which pushes community care. Hearings in 22 days on October 15th. OCLU of California hit DOJ in Northern California, docket 25-CV-04567, over privacy and data sharing and reversing Martin v. Boise, which limited sleeping punishments without shelters. And Dream.org sued HHS in Southern New York, docket 25-CV-07890, with a temporary restraining order already granted September 10th, blocking New York's expansions. Experts like Howard Koh via Psychiatric Times and Harvard T.H. Chan warn it's punitive, echoing the 1960s deinstitutionalization flop when patient numbers plunged from 558,000 in 1955 to 62,000 by 2014, per NIH, leading to more streets and jails.
Evidence-wise, does this treatment-first idea even work? And feasibility?
Not so much, Grace. NIH meta-analyses since 2000 show Housing First cuts homelessness 88% and stabilizes it 41%, with a 1.8 to 1 benefit ratio, per the National Low-Income Housing Coalition on nlihc.org. Kendra's law helped targeted mental illness cases, reducing homelessness 74% and arrests 83%, but substance commitments didn't curb overdoses, according to Filter Mag. Sweeps even spike overdose deaths 15 to 25% via nhchc.org. UCSF's Dr. Margot Kushel told SF Gate it's a failed policy. Housing sparks recovery. Plus, we're short on beds, just 28.4 psych beds per 100,000, below the needed 60 per SAMHSA 2023 on kff.org. Shortages hit 160 million Americans, with 31,000 practitioner gaps now and 350,000 by 2030, says HRSA.
Powerful stuff, Chloe. Historians see this as regression, and advocates push for housing investments.
Yes, per AMA.org and MHA National, it's inhumane and costly, losing $12,000 plus savings per person from Housing First. NIH shows homelessness worsens everything, 30 times higher overdose risks, trauma fueling addiction. The National Alliance to End Homelessness says affordable housing could avert 2,000 plus overdose deaths yearly if we cut homelessness 25%. NPR's WESA and WUSF stressed economic roots, with 31% serious mental illness and 24% chronic substance use disorders in 2023 data, but coercion won't fix poverty.
Thanks for unpacking this complex story, Chloe, with all its twists and turns. Here are some other headlines. Super Typhoon Regasa is raising the stakes and the storm signal, with Hong Kong hoisting a level -8 warning as the king of storms crowns the South China Sea. The Category 5 system, packing sustained winds near 143 miles per hour, is set to make its closest approach Wednesday morning, drawing grim comparisons to Hato and Mangkhut. Citywide shutdowns are in full gust. Schools, businesses, and public services closed, ferry links stilled, and Hong Kong International Airport weathering a gale of cancellations as Cathay Pacific grounds all flights from Tuesday evening to Thursday morning. Across Guangdong, cities like Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Foshan are battening down, with Shenzhen evacuating 400,000 and a forecast landfall between Shenzhen and Shenzhen. Ragasa already lashed the northern Philippines with floods and landslides, leaving at least 3 dead. Tens of millions now brace for impact as the hours tick and the barometer dips. A diplomatic sea change has 4 Western nations charting a new course. Britain, Canada, Australia, and Portugal formally recognized a Palestinian state on Sunday in a synchronized move ahead of the UN General Assembly. London and Ottawa become the first G7 members to take this step. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the aim is to revive prospects for a 2-state solution, stressing Hamas has no role in governance. Canada's Mark Carney cites coordinated pressure and commitments from the Palestinian Authority, including 2026 elections excluding Hamas. Australia's Anthony Albanese calls it recognition of long-held aspirations, while Portugal's Paulo Rangel frames it as the realization of a constant policy line. Israel denounced the decisions as rewarding terror. Washington waved them off as performative. Maintaining statehood should come via direct talks. The coordinated quartet signals mounting impatience with war and settlement expansion and a bid to put peace back on the agenda. In Seattle, a primetime courtroom drama, the FTC's landmark trial against Amazon has begun, alleging the company steered shoppers into Prime with dark patterns and made canceling an odyssey, internally dubbed the Iliad. The complaint says crucial price and auto-renew details minus $14.99 a month or $139 a year were obscured, while cancellation required 4 pages, 6 clicks, and 15 choices. Regulators say Amazon knew of accidental enrollments, calling them an unspoken cancer. Amazon counters that its practices are customer-centric, terms are clear, and improvements are already in place. The 4-week trial could bring hefty penalties, court-ordered overhauls, and even personal liability for executives Neil Lindsay and Jamil Ghani. Consider it a test case for how courts will bookmark or dog-ear dark patterns online, with a separate antitrust suit queued up for 2027. Health check. There is no new U.S. government guidance linking acetaminophen to autism. Ongoing research is mixed and inconclusive. The FDA's stance remains that the evidence doesn't support new recommendations. Past lawsuits have stirred debate, but experts continue to advise patients, especially those who are pregnant, to consult their clinicians before taking any medication. And a grim diagnosis in mental health care. For-profit firms now run over 40% of inpatient psychiatric beds, up from about 13% in 2010, as a new investigation finds some chains skirting federal law with scant consequences. Universal Health Services and Acadia Healthcare face allegations, ranging from EMTALA violations to false claims and unsafe understaffing, with patterns of neglect and abuse alleged at multiple facilities. Settlements have stacked up, UHS paying over $200 million across cases, Acadia facing a $405 million jury award in an abuse case and a separate roughly $20 million DOJ settlement, while private equity's growing footprint raises alarms about profit over patients. The Senate Budget Committee is probing the trend, as critics warn the bottom line has become a dangerous baseline. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.